So when you walk into a church, let's say when you are in a Greek Orthodox church in Edinburgh, Scotland, you look at the differences. And the differences are clear because when you do go to different Orthodox churches across the world, they look a little bit different from what we're used to here in America. How does the church deal with the differences there? Because I think basic human reaction is, well, why does this church look different here in Edinburgh, Scotland? And why does the church look different in Rochester, New York? And even sometimes when you look at the monasteries here in the United States, they're drastically even more different from the parishes that we're used to on our daily Sunday Divine Liturgy celebration. How does the church deal with something like that?
So, John, here is where your Americanism is showing through. In America, because we grow up in this very kind of scholastic and very orderly kind of setting, this is what we expect. When we go to work, we expect that we have a job description, and we expect that this is how we will pay bills. And when I go into a bank, here is where the cash machine will be. In Orthodoxy, you have to strip all of that away, because we as Orthodox revel in our differences. We enjoy that. Now, at the core, and the core is the Divine Liturgy, no priest, no bishop is allowed to change the order or the words of the Divine Liturgy. So in that case, any church that you go to, and when I was in Seoul, Korea, and I was listening to Korean, I knew exactly where I was in the liturgy. In that sense, we are 100% in order. As far as the other things go, the answer is, So let me give you a personal example from myself. The way that I learned in the seminary is unbaptized, unchrismated Orthodox Christians are not allowed to go behind the altar. So unless you are a baptized Orthodox Christian, you can't go back there. At the 40-day blessing, when I bring the child up, I bring them as far as the royal gates, ikonostasi, and then depending upon whether they're male or female, I bring them in front of the Panagia or in front of Christ. Every priest that you grew up with and I grew up with did what? They took the baby around behind the altar and did that, okay? So that came up in this parish when I came here, because the previous priest that was here, he did that for 30 years. And then I come and now I do it. And the people, rightfully so, like yourself, say, hey, Father Angelo, why aren't you not following the rules? The bishop took that under consideration. So we called the bishop, and the bishop said, the previous priest is correct from a tradition standpoint. That's okay because that is the tradition of our church and it doesn't hurt anything. Father Angelo is also correct because he is right in his seminary education that unbaptized Christian cannot go behind the altar. So here we have a case where it's really unresolved. And in this American mindset, we want an answer. Yes, no. We are very binary in how we see things. I'll give you another great example. Here in America, it's a huge thing about girls or women getting anywhere close to anything that's behind there. And that's kind of how I grew up. When I went to Greece and I stayed in Thessaloniki and we stayed with the bishop there, we attended services. And I was behind the altar and we visited many of the churches that he had. And I've got to say, in almost every church, the women went behind the altar and were preparing stuff and doing stuff. And I was looking at the bishop and he was looking at me like, okay, so what's the big deal? So there's another great example. So where I want you to focus in on is it is okay to be different, but we can only be different in the small t traditions, not the capital T traditions. And for us, divine liturgy, the way that the services are conducted, the order of confession, all of those things have to be done in a particular manner. The way that we consecrate has to be done in a particular manner. But other than that, we have this freedom to express ourselves in whatever tradition and culture we have. Certainly, you would say that your village is the only village who knows how to make tsureki the correct way. And I would say, my village is the only way that knows how to make tsureki correctly. Who's right? It doesn't really matter. They both taste good. Obviously, the one from my village tastes a lot better. Okay, but they both taste good. So what I'd say is just we have to relax as Orthodox Christians and know that some of these differences are okay and be able to discern where they're not okay, and that's where we as priests or laity have the ability then to raise those issues up and let then the synod of bishops decide what is appropriate. Now, John, this all began a long time ago with a book called the Bible. You may not have heard of it, but